Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It started with a sign that wasn't there yesterday and two strangers taking photos of his land. Clint Morris thought he was safe on his 7 acres of solitude. He was wrong. A forged signature, a stolen road, and a betrayal that would ignite a war no one saw coming. It was a Wednesday morning in early spring, the kind that starts off chilly but hints at becoming something warm enough to peel your sleeves back by noon. I was outside with a mug of black coffee, standing at the edge of my driveway, enjoying the rare silence that only happens when the nearby ranchers are late with their tractors and the birds haven't agreed on who gets to sing lead that morning. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was some prank, a laminated sign freshly posted right next to my mailbox, zip-tied to one of the wooden posts I'd sunk in myself last year. In bold sans serif letters, it read, "Private access under HOA management. No unauthorized entry." I blinked twice. My coffee didn't. I walked closer, my boots crunching over the gravel, and traced the edges of the sign with my fingers. It was new. Professionally printed. HOA. My place wasn't part of any damn HOA. I'd made damn sure of that when I bought these 7 acres of desert-faded independence just outside of Tucson. This land used to be a grain distribution depot 50 years ago. I'd turned it into a garage, a home, and a sanctuary for the kind of machinery modern Arizona doesn't care about anymore. Classic Detroit muscle, chrome, and big iron from the 60s. I didn't bother finishing my coffee. Something about that sign made the back of my neck itch. I followed the old gravel drive that led past my workshop up toward the ridge. About halfway there, I spotted them. 2 men in crisp blue polo shirts with matching clipboards and HOA logos printed clean across their chests. One of them was taking photos of my yard, specifically the engine hoist and the chassis I'd stripped down over the weekend. The other was walking around my old shed like he owned the place, scribbling something onto his clipboard like he was inspecting termite damage on a damn rental property. I walked straight up to them. "Morning," I said, my voice louder than it needed to be. "You two want to explain why the hell you're trespassing on private property?" The photo guy jumped a little. Clipboard guy didn't. He stepped forward and gave me a thin-lipped politician smile. "Good morning, sir. We're from Hickory Hill Estates HOA. We're conducting a routine beautification compliance assessment as part of the new zone integration protocol." That was a real mouthful of bureaucratic manure. I stared at him for a beat. "Let me stop you right there," I said. "This is private land. I'm not part of any HOA. I didn't sign a damn thing. So unless you're looking to get charged with trespassing, I suggest you get back on your side of the imaginary fence." The other guy piped up, less confident. "Sir, we were told this parcel is part of the updated boundary alignment. The board approved it last month, and consent from the parcel owner, Mr. Wilson, was filed and documented." I felt my stomach drop through my boots. "Wilson?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. "You mean Derek Wilson?" "Correct," said Clipboard. "According to our registry, Mr. Wilson confirmed the easement access and integration under the new development clause." For a second, I couldn't even find words. Derek Wilson, my friend since undergrad, my best man 20 years ago, the guy I had beers with every other Saturday, had filed something with these jackals under my name. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and started recording. "You boys can go ahead and turn around," I said calmly. "You're trespassing, and now you're on camera. This here's private land. I've got the deed, the map, and the title to prove it. So unless you've got a sheriff with a warrant, you're both walking off this property before I start stacking charges." That wiped the smug off their faces. They tried to talk over each other about procedures and confusion, but I wasn't in the mood. I walked with them until they stepped off my gravel, back toward the cul-de-sac they slithered in from. Then I turned back toward the driveway, and that's when I noticed the surveyor stakes, bright orange, marked with flags, running straight through the southern edge of my property, the side that bordered the back fence of Hickory Hill Estates. I counted at least 5 of them, hammer drilled into my dirt like it already belonged to somebody else. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about Derek, about how easy it would have been for him to stop this before it started, or at the very least, give me a call. And yet, not a word, no warning, no text, just a bunch of HOA uniforms measuring my land like I was already dead and buried under it. The next morning, I tried calling him, straight to voicemail, twice. I sat in my garage staring at the tools I'd spent years collecting, thinking, If they were coming for my land, they were going to regret ever putting their boots on my dirt. I didn't waste time waiting around for a callback. That same afternoon, I hopped in my old F250, the one with the faded red paint and the dented bumper from an elk collision back in Flagstaff, and headed straight for Derek's place. He lived inside Hickory Hill Estates, the same HOA that apparently decided to annex my land like it was goddamn Crimea. Getting past the front gate was easier than I expected. The young guy in the booth recognized me, probably from the time I helped Derek move his cast iron smoker into the backyard last fall. "Hey, Mr. Morris," he said with a wave. "Here to see Mr. Wilson." "Yup," I said. "He expecting you?" he asked. "Not exactly," I replied. I guess something in my tone made the kid hesitate, but he hit the button anyway, and the gate slid open with that smug electric hum that's supposed to make people feel safe. Derek's house was one of those polished beige clones with artificial grass, 2.5 kids, and a porch swing that never got used. I parked right in the driveway, no intention of being subtle, and rang the bell hard enough to make it echo down the block. He opened the door, still chewing something. Chips, I think. And for half a second, he looked like he was happy to see me. "Clint," he said with that familiar grin. "Wasn't expecting—" "What the hell did you sign, Derek?" I cut him off. "You told the HOA they could use my land?" His face went stiff, smile folding in on itself like a bad poker hand. He looked over his shoulder and then stepped outside, pulling the door half shut behind him. "Look, man, can we not do this here?" "Oh, we're doing it right here," I said. "You told those bastards you had my consent. You filed a goddamn easement in my name." He sighed. "It's not like that." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I took of the document their inspector had flashed at me. "You want to explain this voluntary servitude access agreement? Because that sure as hell looks like my name on it." He glanced at the screen and rubbed his neck. "I didn't think it would be a big deal. It's just for road access, Clint. They're offering $3,000 a month." "You think I give a shit about their money?" I snapped. "That's my land. You forged my goddamn signature. That's a felony." Derek's eyes darted toward a neighbor's window. He was sweating now. "I didn't forge anything. I used the PDF you sent me when we were working on that insurance paperwork. I copied it in and—" "You what?" I took a step forward. "You used my signature from an old file to sign a legal document without telling me." "I thought you'd come around," he muttered. "It's just business, man. You weren't using that road for anything. It was sitting there. And I figured, better to have some cash flow than get steamrolled when they build anyway." "Oh, so this was a favor? You stealing my land was a financial courtesy." Derek's lips curled defensively. "Look, you've always been the lone wolf guy. Off-grid, no permits, no streetlights. The board thinks you're a liability. They were going to find a way in eventually. I just helped smooth it." I was shaking now. Not from fear, from the kind of fury that makes your hands go cold. I backed away slowly, like I might punch him if I stood there another second. "Lawyer's gonna call you," I said. "And when he does, you better have a damn good answer for the judge." Derek tried to follow me, but I was already back in the truck, engine growling like it was ready to break something. I drove out of that Stepford hellhole with one hand on the wheel and the other calling my attorney, Jacob Ellis. Jacob didn't waste time. "If there's a recorded easement with a forged signature, we're not just looking at civil action," he said. "That's criminal fraud, Clint. And if HOA used it to alter the zoning map, we've got grounds for immediate injunction." By the end of the day, we had filed a cease and desist notice to the HOA, pending a full review of the property records. Jacob also submitted a request to the county recorder's office for the original filings. That night, I pulled every document I had, deed, topography maps, boundary surveys, everything. I laid them out across the garage workbench like blueprints for war. At midnight, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and walked the property line. That southern edge, the one they tried to carve up behind my back, had always been just dust, cactus, and rusting fence posts. But now it was the front line. They thought they could file paper and build pavement like I wouldn't notice. They forgot what happens when a mechanic gets pissed off. The roar of machinery woke me up before dawn. I was mid-dream about tearing down a 68th Camaro engine when the sound of heavy diesel equipment jerked me into reality. At first, I thought maybe one of the county crews was grading the main road, but then I felt it in my bones, the kind of rumble that says something is happening on your land without your damn permission. I threw on jeans and boots and stormed outside. The sky was still purple, just beginning to warm at the edges, but the lights from 4 work trucks and 2 massive yellow machines were already burning bright at the southern end of my property. One of them was a road grader. The other, a dump truck loaded with gravel. Men in reflective vests were walking around like they owned the place. There were orange cones, spray paint on the ground, a portable toilet already set up like they planned to be here a while. I caught sight of a guy holding a blueprint. They were prepping to pave. I was on them in seconds. "Hey!" I barked. "Who the hell gave you the right to dig up my land?" The foreman looked up from the blueprint, squinting like I was an unexpected raccoon. "Morning. You Clint Morris?" "You know damn well I am." "We're with Gulf South Infrastructure. Got work orders here from Hickory Hill HOA. Said this section's part of the expansion corridor. We're widening the easement to install a 2-lane service road. Gonna connect to the new model homes behind Phase 4. I walked right up to him. "That's private land, and you're about 3 minutes away from having the sheriff haul your whole crew off for criminal trespass." He waved the clipboard. "This says otherwise." I snatched it out of his hands. It was a photocopy of the same forged document, that bastardized easement agreement with my stolen signature. It even had a county stamp. Jesus Christ, they'd gone and filed it officially. That's when I made a decision. I walked back to the garage, opened my gun safe, and grabbed my 12-gauge. Not loaded, not yet, but cradled where they could see it as I walked calmly back down the drive. "Everybody off my land," I said flatly, standing between the grader and the start of the path. "This is your one and only warning." The foreman raised his hands. "Sir, no one wants trouble. We've got permits, signatures. You've got bullshit and a lawsuit coming," I said. "Now, unless you've got a badge and a court order, this road doesn't move an inch." "Not through my dirt." One of the workers was already on the phone calling someone. 5 minutes later, a Maricopa County Sheriff's cruiser rolled up fast, lights on but no siren. Officer stepped out, mid-40s, calm, seasoned, and kept a healthy distance when he saw the shotgun. "Sir," he said, hand resting near his belt but not on it. "You mind putting that down so we can talk?" I laid the gun down in the bed of my truck. "Fine. Now tell these jokers to pack it up." The HOA rep showed up around the same time. Some suit I'd never met, clipboard in hand, and that slick HOA smile that looks like it was taught in some corporate seminar on how to politely screw people. He started running his mouth about recorded agreements, county approvals, zoning updates, and regional development needs. The deputy listened, nodded, then turned to me. "You have documentation of ownership?" "I've got the original notarized deed in my safe and a full land survey from 2019 that shows no servitudes, no easements, and no association ties," I said. "And I've got my lawyer on speed dial." I showed the deputy a scanned copy on my phone. He took one look and nodded. "All right. Until this gets sorted legally, I'm shutting down operations. No one touches this land unless a judge says otherwise." The HOA guy turned red. "This is an authorized development." "It's a private property dispute," the deputy said, "which means you can take it up in court. But for now, off the land." The crew started backing off. Trucks idled. The grader rumbled back down the hill. No apology, just inconvenience in their eyes. But the damage was already done. The gravel they dumped had torn up my scrub line, flattened part of my drainage berm, and scraped 2 full yards off the crown of my access road. My security camera on that end of the property, the one I'd mounted on the old grain silo, was dangling by a wire, clearly clipped. I stood there as the dust settled, staring at the mess, heart hammering in my chest like an engine with no oil. They didn't just try to roll over me. They tried to erase me, with paperwork, construction, and bullshit smiles. Back inside, I locked the door behind me and called Jacob again. They made their move, I told him. Time for ours. The morning after the standoff with the road crew, I woke up to the sound of gravel hitting my window. Not metaphorically, someone had actually thrown a handful of pebbles at my second-floor bedroom. I peeked through the blinds, half expecting more trespassers. Turned out it was Ronnie, my neighbor from 2 parcels over, standing by his truck with a mug in one hand and a flash drive in the other. "Got something you'll want to see," he said when I opened the door. Ronnie ran a drone photography business, mostly for realtors who wanted aerial glam shots of their listings. But he occasionally flew over my property with permission, especially after we lost 2 sheepdogs to coyotes last year. That morning, he'd brought me some gold. Drone footage of the HOA crew not only trespassing, but actively marking new easement lines past the survey stakes. One guy even used spray paint directly on my garage slab. Clear, high-res, time-stamped. I called Jacob, forwarded the files, and within hours we had our first salvo ready. An official cease and desist letter delivered via courier to Hickory Hill Estates HOA with a full package of attached evidence, drone footage, GPS-tagged images, and the scan deed highlighting the exemption from any HOA authority. Jacob also filed an emergency restraining request with the county court to prevent any further construction on or adjacent to my property pending investigation. Next came the civil lawsuit. We filed Count 1, fraudulent misrepresentation and forgery of legal documents. Count 2, criminal trespass and unauthorized physical damage to private land. Count 3, defamation by implication. Multiple HOA emails had circulated accusing me of violating communal standards, which Jacob flagged as a PR maneuver to establish false public consensus. Count 4, demand for compensatory damages to be calculated upon land inspection. But that wasn't all. We also submitted a formal complaint to the Arizona State Land Commission. Turns out the forged servitude agreement had been quietly pushed through the county recorder's office, likely thanks to a connection. And Jacob had a name. A certain Benji Morales, clerk at the zoning office, had processed the update to my parcel status under a batch of developer-sponsored changes. Jacob tracked the timeline. The update went through less than 48 hours after Derek submitted the forged paperwork. We flagged it as suspicious and filed a request for full document logs and internal communications. Meanwhile, Jacob got in touch with a contact at the local newspaper who'd covered HOA corruption scandals before. No names yet, just a background probe. That night, I walked the property again, this time with a flashlight and my German Shepherd Luna padding beside me like a ghost. About 100 feet past the old loading dock, I found more signs someone had been snooping. Boot prints in the dry dirt, half-buried wire cutters, and a broken lens cover that looked like it came off one of my trail cams. The next day, when I checked the footage, I found it. Grainy video of two guys in hoodies crawling over the fence around 3 in the morning. They spray-painted one camera, then yanked another clean off the post. In the background, my generator was running. It wasn't the quietest unit, but now I knew how they masked the sound. When I checked the garage, sure enough, the newer Honda generator I kept for power outages was gone. I filed the police report immediately, handed over the footage, and made it clear in writing that I suspected the vandalism was retaliation connected to the ongoing legal action. It wasn't a stretch. Within the week, HOA sent me a formal notice of non-compliance, claiming I was obstructing regional development goals and might face additional penalties for failure to maintain road accessibility. That was rich. We sent that notice straight into the evidence pile. Jacob made sure every new action they took was added to the civil case and attached to the restraining request. By week's end, the county issued a temporary stay on all land activity within 100 feet of my southern boundary, pending investigation of land use fraud. That stopped the road crew cold, but this wasn't over. I knew it. They hadn't just overstepped. They'd built a whole damn narrative where I was the obstacle and they were the progress. So I did what I do best. I got my hands dirty. I reinforced the perimeter fencing. I added 2 more trail cameras. I swapped out the locks on the workshop and bolted the garage like Fort Knox. And just to send a message, I installed a brand new sign at the south edge of my land. Private property, no entry. Trespassers will be photographed, identified, and sued. Simple, direct, and more polite than what I actually wanted to say. The subpoena landed harder than I expected, not just on paper, but in the way people started talking. Hickory Hill Estates had their own little echo chamber, newsletters, Facebook groups, and, God help me, a neighborhood podcast. Once news got out that I was suing them, I became public enemy number 1. HOA board meetings started referencing me by name. I was the agitator, the holdout, the uncooperative element threatening communal progress. If I had $1 for every euphemism they invented to avoid calling me what they really wanted to, I wouldn't need to fix another car in my life. And then, just when I thought the situation couldn't rot any further, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail, just a text right after, "I have HOA internal documents. You'll want to see this. Discreet source. Call me back." I forwarded the number to Jacob. 10 minutes later, he called me back. Voice low. I think it's legit. That's a burner from a guy I've dealt with before. Used to work in municipal records. Go see him. His name was Carl, and he met me at a parking lot behind a run-down Circle K on the outskirts of town. I know how that sounds, but the guy had the nervous energy of someone who didn't want to be seen. And he brought receipts. Literally, he handed over a flash drive and a manila envelope. Inside were scans of internal emails from the Hickory Hill board, including Derek Wilson, my old buddy, and several members of the developers project team. The tone of the emails: smug, calculated, deliberate. They discussed a soft integration plan for my property. Morris is emotionally attached to the land, will resist initially, but Wilson can lean on the personal connection. Offer light compensation. Use zoning pressure if needed. HOA maps already being updated. Recorder's office contact confirmed. The emails were dated weeks before any inspectors ever set foot on my property. One message even had a PDF attachment, a blank servitude agreement with my name already filled in, just waiting for a signature that never came. That was it. Smoking gun. I went straight to Jacob's office. He scanned every file into the system and whistled low. They knew. They were planning to squeeze you in from the start. And Derek. He wasn't just involved, he was the point man. We filed a motion to admit the emails as evidence. Jacob also forwarded everything to the district attorney's office with a recommendation to investigate the recorder's office. There was enough here to crack something wide open. But the emotional part hit later that evening when Derek called me out of the blue. His voice was tired, like he hadn't slept in days. "Clint, man, can we talk? Off the record?" "Only if you say it in person," I said. "No texts, no calls. Come clean or don't come at all." We met at a dive bar we used to hit after football games in college. Same jukebox, same terrible nachos. He looked older than I remembered, or maybe I just finally saw the real face under the mask. "I screwed up," he said after the second beer. "They offered me 20 grand up front. Said if I could get you to sign, I'd get a cut of the future development. 5% of the commercial lot at the south exit once they pave through your road." I stared at him. "You tried to buy my land with my own friendship." He looked down. "I figured you'd resist, sure, but you always hated dealing with paperwork. I thought maybe if I pushed the HOA's offer, softened the landing, you'd come around. You didn't push anything. You forged my goddamn name." He didn't deny it, just took another sip. "I didn't think it would go this far." "Well, it has. You lied to my face. You filed fraud in my name, and you unleashed a pack of corporate termites on my land." He didn't say anything else. Maybe there was nothing left to say. I left him there with his beer and his remorse. The next morning, I found fresh graffiti on the side of my workshop. "Community first, hillbilly last." They'd used spray paint, bright yellow, across the sheet metal siding. One camera was missing, another was cracked. A third had caught the grainy silhouette of two men in hoodies, once again entering through the southern fence line. Inside the garage, my tools were untouched, but my generator gone. Again. I didn't bother guessing who'd sent them. This wasn't just vandalism, it was a message. So I filed another report. This time, I asked Jacob to attach it directly to the criminal complaint against Derek and the HOA. Retaliatory damage, following sworn testimony and active litigation. We were past the line now. There was no way back to friendship. Hell, there was no way back to normal. I stood in the middle of the garage that night, staring at the yellow insult across my wall and thinking how fitting it was. I used to be the guy who built engines to outrun anyone on the road. Now I was building a case to bury them. I never thought I'd find myself putting on a pressed shirt for war, but there I was, standing in front of the county courthouse in downtown Tucson, looking like I'd just walked out of a used truck ad with legal briefs under one arm. My lawyer, Jacob, stood beside me, calm as ever, suit spotless, tie sharp, and voice low as we stepped through security. "This isn't just about your land anymore," he said. "This is about precedent. If they get away with this, your neighbors are next." Inside, courtroom 2B was already buzzing. The gallery was packed. Half the seats were filled with HOA members and their spouses, probably here to see the show. Local reporters lingered near the back wall. I even spotted a realtor from Hickory Hill whispering furiously into her phone, no doubt already thinking about property values. The judge, an older woman named Han. Leticia Mendoza walked in promptly at 9. Sharp, no nonsense. She scanned the room like a school principal ready to hand out suspensions. Jacob kicked things off with a clear, firm opening statement. Your Honor, we intend to show that my client, Mr. Clint Morris, was the victim of a premeditated scheme by Hickory Hill Estates HOA and associated individuals to fraudulently acquire use and control over his land through the use of forged documents, retaliatory property damage, and coordinated zoning manipulation. HOA's attorney, a smarmy corporate guy named Graham Lively, leaned into his argument like he was trying to sell life insurance. He called the dispute a tragic misunderstanding, claimed the servitude was clearly authorized, and described me as emotionally resistant to necessary urban development. Yeah, I rolled my eyes. So did the judge. Then came the evidence. Jacob started with the basics: title deed, survey maps, notarized documents, tax assessments. All of it showed, beyond a doubt, that my parcel had always existed outside of Hickory Hill's jurisdiction. Then came the meat: drone footage of unauthorized inspections, time-stamped video of construction prep, audio recordings of HOA reps referencing the Wilson deal, and most damning of all, the internal emails. The ones that showed the HOA and the developer had coordinated a plan to forcibly integrate my land by leaning on Derek and manipulating zoning staff. The judge sat up noticeably during that part. Then Jacob brought up our expert witness, a forensic document examiner who confirmed, under oath, that the signature on the servitude agreement had been lifted from an old insurance document and pasted onto a new form. Under cross-examination, HOA's lawyer tried to dance around that. So you're saying it's not possible that Mr. Morris simply signed two documents that happened to look similar? The expert raised an eyebrow. No, sir. I'm saying your document is a cut-and-paste job using a degraded scan. I have overlays and print pattern analysis to prove it. Boom. Then it got worse, for them. Jacob subpoenaed Benji Morales, the county clerk, who approved the zoning change. At first, Morales tried to play dumb, but under oath and pressure, his story started cracking. When Jacob presented a copy of an internal memo with his name on it, one clearly showing he'd fast-tracked the file with the developer's name in the CC line, the courtroom got real quiet. HOA's defense tried to pivot. They called a witness, one of the HOA board members, to claim I had verbally agreed many times to share access to the southern road. Jacob let him talk for 30 seconds. Then he brought up a transcript of my email exchange from 2 months before the incident, where I explicitly rejected any road sharing due to liability and privacy. He even had the read receipt logged. The board member sputtered. Judge Mendoza made a note. Then Jacob did the boldest thing I've ever seen in a courtroom. He called Derek Wilson to the stand. Derek looked like a man being marched to a firing squad. He avoided eye contact with me, jaw tight, hair combed like he was still trying to look like a respectable businessman. He took the oath, sat down, and tried to act composed, but Jacob wasn't there to play nice. He started slow. How long have you known Mr. Morris? 23 years. Ever been to his property? Yes, many times. Did you submit a servitude agreement to the HOA with Mr. Morris's name on it? Derek hesitated. Yes. Did Mr. Morris authorize you to do so? No. That was it. The moment. Jacob pressed further, asking about the $20,000 consulting fee from the developer, the emails, the forged signature, the bar conversation. Derek admitted it all. Reluctantly, quietly, but under oath, there was no wiggling out. When Jacob sat down, you could feel the weight shift in the room. HOA's attorney looked like someone had just unplugged his server. Court adjourned for the day. I walked out past a crowd of tight-lipped HOA members and stunned neighbors. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The truth had landed. It took less than 48 hours for the verdict to come down, but I swear it felt like weeks. The courtroom was packed again. Reporters had picked up the scent, and now it wasn't just a property dispute in southern Arizona. It was a case about corruption, fraud, and how far a homeowners association would go to muscle through a development plan. Judge Mendoza entered with the same no-nonsense walk and gavel drop. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. Then she began. She didn't waste time. In reviewing the facts presented, the court finds sufficient evidence of willful fraud, document forgery, and coordinated abuse of process conducted by representatives of the Hickory Hill Estates HOA in conjunction with external developer interests. Her voice was steady, firm. I stared straight ahead. Jaw locked, trying not to let the satisfaction show on my face too early. She continued, "It is clear that Mr. Clint Morris did not consent to any servitude or easement agreement." The court recognizes that the signature submitted was digitally replicated from a prior unrelated document and used without authorization. The fraudulent agreement was then weaponized to alter zoning records, resulting in material harm to the plaintiff. Then came the numbers. The HOA is hereby ordered to pay the plaintiff $450,000 in damages, covering property damage, legal fees, business disruption, and emotional distress. There was a low murmur in the room. My ears rang. I just kept staring at the bench. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, the court refers this matter to the Maricopa County District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution of Mr. Derek Wilson for fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and document falsification. Mr. Wilson is hereby remanded into custody pending sentencing. I looked at Derek as the bailiff approached. He didn't resist. No smugness left. No apologies. No words. He didn't look at me. Maybe he couldn't. I watched the man who used to be my closest friend get led out of the courtroom in cuffs. 3.5 years. That's what the DA ended up recommending. He took a plea deal, fraud and conspiracy with cooperation in the investigation into the county recorder's office, and that's where it got even messier. Because Judge Mendoza also ordered a judicial review of all zoning changes linked to Hickory Hill over the past 2 years. Suddenly, everyone in the room got real quiet. The HOA president turned ghost pale. Reporters scribbled like mad. Benji Morales, the zoning clerk, was already under internal investigation, but now it was official. Judge Mendoza ordered the county to audit every parcel adjustment he had touched. Rumor had it he was already cooperating, trying to save his ass before the hammer came down. If the whispers were true, Hickory Hill wasn't the only HOA using shortcuts and backroom deals to swallow up land. After the hearing, Jacob and I stepped outside. The media was waiting. Mics, cameras, questions flying. I let Jacob handle it. He was better with microphones than I was. I stood a few feet back, arms crossed, watching the people who once mocked me now shove each other to get a soundbite. One reporter broke through the crowd and called out to me directly. "Mr. Morris, any comment on today's verdict?" I paused. "Yeah," I said finally. "Don't ever trust a man who offers you a contract before a beer." Later that evening, we sat on the deck of my garage, a cooler of Shinerbach between us. Jacob had loosened his tie. I had kicked off my boots. Luna snored at our feet, spent from barking at the press trucks parked outside my fence most of the day. "Think they'll appeal?" I asked. "They can try," Jacob said, cracking open another bottle. "But with Derek flipping and that document trail, they're just going to burn more money chasing a losing hand." I leaned back and looked out across my land. My still mine land. The workshop was quiet. The southern road was blocked off with construction barrels. A couple of survey stakes still stuck out of the dust, bent, faded, forgotten. They'd tried to pave over my rights with a lie and a checkbook. Didn't work. A week after the verdict, I blocked off the southern road for good. Not with cones. Not with ropes. With concrete. 3 1,200-pound barrier blocks trucked in from a contractor buddy I'd done work for back in the day. I set them down at the edge of my property line where the gravel met the scrub, the same spot where the HOA's bulldozers had tried to crawl in. On each one, I painted thick, defiant red letters, "Private property, no access, no negotiation." Then, just above it, on a steel post, I mounted a sign of my own making. "Friendship doesn't mean selling someone else's land. Access denied. No one enters again." I didn't do it for drama. I did it because I meant it. There were still HOA members circling like vultures. Some tried to play it polite. A man named Roger left a basket of muffins on my gate with a handwritten note that said, "Let's heal." I sent back the basket with a wrench inside and a note of my own. "Fix your board first." Others weren't so nice. I caught one guy in an HOA windbreaker standing just outside my new line, hands on hips muttering about community damage and wasted opportunity. I didn't say a word. Just turned on the irrigation pump near him by remote, soaked him good. He didn't come back. But most importantly, I got back to work. The garage was still intact. Most of my tools had survived. With the settlement money, I expanded the shop, added another lift, a new paint booth, and finally laid down that epoxy floor I'd been meaning to do for years. Jacob joked it was the first courtroom payout he'd ever seen invested in engine blocks and torque wrenches. I hired 2 part-time apprentices from the local community college, good kids with calluses, and no patience for electric vehicles. Taught them how to rebuild a 70s carburetor and why chrome only matters if it shines after a long day's drive. Luna got a new doghouse, the steel kind, reinforced. She earned it. As for Derek, he served time, 3.5 years. I didn't visit, didn't write, didn't even read the article when the local paper did a follow-up on his conviction. He tried to reach out once from county. A letter I didn't open. I burned it in the same barrel I used to scrap dead parts. The HOA, meanwhile, took a beating. Without access to the rear road, several homes along the southern edge lost their appeal. A few sales fell through. One family left within months. The developer who bankrolled the annexation scheme pulled out of Phase 5 entirely. Their investors weren't interested in another litigation-sensitive zone. That was the phrase, printed right on a public investor memo that got leaked and went viral in local real estate groups. My land stayed exactly what it was, mine. No servitude, no easement, no compromise. And the community surprisingly began to shift. A few of the younger residents started coming by, not to snoop, but to ask questions. One of them, a woman named Kayla, asked if I could speak to her civics class about property rights. I declined at first, but then she brought her dad, a retired Vietnam vet who'd read about the case and wanted to shake my hand. I agreed. So one Tuesday, I stood in front of 25 high school juniors in a room that smelled like old carpet and expo markers, telling them how a single forged signature nearly cost me my land. I told them about zoning tricks, legal paper, and the power of saying no. They asked if I hated HOAs. I said I hated dishonesty. They asked if I missed my friend. I said I missed the version of him that used to care more about beer than bonuses. Then I drove home, turned off my phone, and got back under the hood of a half-finished GTO that didn't care about politics, signatures, or subdivisions. Just oil, spark, and patience.